Valorian flagship Ascendant Fury listed 17 degrees to port, venting atmosphere from wounds that would never heal. Commander Kethvaris stood on a bridge, lit only by emergency crimson, watching the tactical display paint their doom in stuttering holographic fragments. "Damage report," she demanded, though her twin hearts already knew the answer. 43 vessels, remaining from the original 112. Lieutenant Sorvex's voice carried the hollow tone of someone reading a death sentence. Of those, only 9 maintain combat capability, above 30%. The Dominion's interdiction field prevents retreat. We have perhaps 6 hours before their main fleet arrives to finish what their vanguard started. Kethvaris pressed her 4-fingered hand against the cracked viewport. Beyond, the graveyard of her fleet drifted in silent accusation. The Kreth Dominion had sprung their trap perfectly, a false distress beacon, a manufactured nebula to mask their numbers, and pulse weapons specifically tuned to Valorian shield frequencies. Someone had given them intelligence. Someone had betrayed the coalition. What of the repair yards at Threshold Station? Destroyed in the initial assault, Commander, along with our reserve crews and spare components. The words hung in the recycled air like a verdict. Admiral Vetheran's hologram flickered to life. At the center of the bridge, his ancient face carved from centuries of warfare. Even as a projection, his presence demanded the attention of every officer. "Commander Kethvaris, I have reviewed the fleet assessments." The Admiral's tone carried no hope, no comfort. "Our fleet is beyond repair. We lack the materials, the facilities, and the time. I am ordering all vessels to prepare for a final stand. We will sell our deaths dearly and buy time for the coalition to reinforce the inner systems." "Admiral, there is nothing." Vetheran's eyes, deep violet and weary, held hers through the light years between them. "I have commanded Valorian forces for 300 years. I know when a battle is lost. Honor demands we face our end with dignity." A chime interrupted them. Sorvex checked his console, mandibles clicking in confusion. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the human observer vessel." Kethvaris had forgotten about the humans. The tiny species had joined the coalition only 8 cycles ago, their contribution laughable. A single frigate-class vessel called the Resolute, carrying engineering advisors meant to study Valorian technology. They had been assigned to the fleet as a diplomatic gesture, nothing more. During the ambush, she had assumed them destroyed with the rest. They survived, apparently. They're requesting permission to dock with the Ascendant Fury. Their captain wishes to speak with you directly. Admiral Vetheran made a sound that might have been a laugh in better times. "Let them come. Perhaps they wish to die alongside us. It would be the first noteworthy thing their species has accomplished." The transmission ended. Kethvaris watched her crew move through their duties with the mechanical precision of soldiers who had accepted death. In 6 hours, none of this would matter. But something nagged at her, a memory from the coalition briefings on humanity. They had been described as persistent, adaptive, a species that had clawed their way to space despite a homeworld determined to kill them. The Valorian assessment had dismissed them as technologically primitive. Yet they had survived the ambush that destroyed 69 Valorian warships. "Clear the human vessel for docking," she ordered. "I will meet their captain personally." The Resolute looked like a cargo hauler that had been fitted for war as an afterthought. Scorch marks covered its hull, and one of its engine pods hung by cables, but it was intact. Its docking clamps engaged with the Ascendant Fury's port bay, and Kethvaris waited as the airlock cycled. The human who emerged was not what she expected. He was older than most she had seen in the coalition files, gray threading through dark hair, lines carved deep around pale eyes. He wore a simple uniform, unmarked except for a name patch, gray. "Commander Kethvaris." His voice was rough, tired. "I'm Captain Deacon Gray. I need to see your fleet's damage assessments." All of them. She studied him, looking for the awe that most species displayed when first encountering Valorians. She found none. Only focus, and something else she couldn't identify. Captain Gray, I admire your species' optimism, but surely you heard Admiral Vetheran's assessment. Our fleet is beyond repair. We lack, I heard what you lack. Gray stepped closer, and she noticed he walked with a slight limp, an old injury, poorly healed. I'm asking what you have. Wreckage. The dying and the dead. 6 hours. The human smiled, and there was no humor in it. Then we'd better get started. The Situation Room of the Ascendant Fury had been designed for strategic planning on a grand scale. Now it served as a morgue for dying ships. Holographic representations of the surviving fleet rotated slowly above the central table, each vessel annotated with cascading damage reports in Valorian script. Deacon Gray stood at the display, his datapad interfacing with the alien systems through a jury-rigged adapter. He had said nothing for 20 minutes, simply absorbing information while Kethvaras's officers watched with expressions ranging from pity to contempt. "Your engineer doesn't speak," Sub-Commander Taurix muttered, mandibles tight with frustration. "Perhaps he's finally understood the futility." "Captain Gray," Kethvaras interjected, "my officers require an explanation. You requested this meeting. What exactly do you propose?" Gray looked up from his datapad. The exhaustion in his eyes had been replaced by something harder. "Your fleet has 43 ships. 9 are combat-capable. 34 are, in your assessment, worthless." He tapped the display, highlighting the crippled vessels. "I'm looking at 34 ships full of parts, power systems, weapons, and armor plating. I'm looking at raw materials that nobody's using because you've already decided they're dead." Taurix stepped forward, towering over the human by nearly a meter. "You suggest we strip our wounded vessels? Desecrate them? I'm suggesting you want to survive." Gray met the alien's gaze without flinching. "I spent 30 years in Earth's shipyards. Started as a welder, ended up running emergency repair operations during the Belt conflicts. I've rebuilt destroyers from scrap while missiles were still falling. Your technology is more advanced than anything we've got, but metal is metal. Power conduits are power conduits. And a ship that's mostly broken is still partly functional." He manipulated the display, and the holographic fleet rearranged itself. The crippled vessels dissolved into component systems, highlighted sections showing weapons, shields, engines, power cores. "Your 9 combat-capable ships are all damaged. The Ascendant Fury alone has lost 40% of her port weapons arrays, and her secondary shield generators are offline. But the cruiser Velith's Hope has intact shield systems despite having no main propulsion. The destroyer Keth's Vengeance has 3 working pulse cannons attached to a hull that's been gutted. You're looking at 43 broken ships. I'm looking at 9 ships waiting to be rebuilt." Silence held the room. Admiral Vetheran's hologram materialized at the table's head, his expression unreadable. "You propose to cannibalize our fleet. I propose to give you a fighting chance, Admiral. It cannot be done. Our repair systems require specialized facilities. The precision involved in Valorian ship construction takes months in your dockyards," Gray interrupted. "I've read the specs. Your construction philosophy is based on perfection. Everything fitted to exact tolerances. Every component manufactured to specific standards. It's beautiful engineering." He paused. "It's also why you're about to die." Taurix's hand moved toward his sidearm. Kethvaras raised a hand to stop him, her eyes fixed on Gray. "Continue, Captain. Human ships are built to break. We expect things to go wrong, because they always do. So we design for repair, for adaptation. Our components are standardized. Our systems are modular. We bolt things together because bolts can be removed. We use redundant pathways because the primary will fail." Gray pulled up a schematic on his datapad and projected it alongside the Valorian display. Your shield generator requires 72 precise connections to function. Ours requires 12, and it'll work with 8 if you bypass the safeties. Yours is more efficient. Ours keeps working when half of it is slag. You're asking us to butcher our engineering principles, Vetheran said. I'm asking you to survive. Principles won't matter when the Dominion turns your fleet to debris. Gray leaned on the table, his voice dropping. You've got 6 hours. In 6 hours, I can strip components from your worst damaged ships and integrate them into your best. It won't be pretty. It won't be perfect. Half the repairs will probably fail within days. But when the Dominion arrives, you'll have 9 vessels with functional weapons and shields instead of 9 ships waiting to die. Kethvaris looked at her admiral's projection. Vetheran's expression remained stone, but she knew him well enough to see the calculation behind his eyes. It's impossible, Tarex protested. We don't have the personnel. Our engineering crews were stationed at Threshold. You have crews on every ship, Gray said. Combat crews, support crews. On human vessels, everyone learns basic repair. Compartmentalization is a luxury you can't afford. Our warriors are not laborers. Then your warriors will die as warriors and accomplish nothing. Or they can pick up a plasma torch and save their own damn lives. Gray's voice hardened. I didn't come here to argue philosophy. I came here because I've got 15 engineers on my ship who know how to make broken things work, and I'm offering to teach your people to do the same. You can accept the help, or you can stand on your honor while the Dominion burns you out of the sky. Choose. The silence stretched. Finally, Admiral Vetheran spoke. Commander Kethvaris, you have operational authority over the fleet. The decision is yours. She looked at the human. This small, fragile creature from a species that had barely touched the stars. He stood without arrogance, without plea, just certainty. Sub-Commander Tarex, she said, signal all vessels. I want every able body ready for work assignments within the hour. Captain Gray will coordinate. Tarex's mandibles worked in protest, but discipline held. Yes, Commander. Gray nodded once, already turning back to his datapad. We'll need to prioritize. The Ascendant Fury first. She's your flagship, and she's got the structure to handle additions. Then the heavy cruisers Velith's Hope and Saren's Light. I need your engineering chiefs in Base 7 in 30 minutes. As he moved toward the door, Kethvaris stopped him with a question. Captain Gray, you said you worked the belt conflicts. Earth's history files mention those as minor skirmishes. Gray paused, his hand on the doorframe. When he turned, his expression held something old and heavy. We lost 8,000 people in the belt conflicts. Nothing about that was minor. He looked at the tactical display, at the symbols representing thousands of Valorian souls. But we learned how to keep fighting when everything was broken. That's what I'm offering you. He left. Kethvaris stared at the display, at the impossible mathematics of survival that the human had laid before them. 34 ships rendered to components. 9 vessels rebuilt from scraps. It was madness. It violated every principle of Valorian engineering. It was also the only chance they had. Admiral, she said quietly, I think we may have underestimated the humans. Vetheran's hologram flickered. Perhaps. But let us see if they can deliver before we revise our assessments. 4 hours into the operation, Base 7 of the Ascendant Fury had transformed into something between a factory and a battlefield. Sparks cascaded from dozens of welding points as Valorian warriors, their ceremonial armor discarded for worksuits, cut and joined metal under the direction of Gray's 15 engineers. The human team moved through the chaos with practiced efficiency, physically demonstrating techniques that the Valorians' training had never included. Kethvaris watched from the observation deck as a young human woman guided a Valorian soldier through the process of splice connecting 2 incompatible power systems. The soldier's movements were clumsy, uncertain, but the connection held. "It won't pass inspection," Tarek said beside her, his voice bitter. "It doesn't need to pass inspection. It needs to work." Below, Gray moved from station to station, checking progress, solving problems. He had not stopped for 4 hours. Neither had anyone else. Commander.D. Communications Officer Preth's voice came through her earpiece. "Long-range sensors have updated. The Dominion main fleet has accelerated. They will arrive in 93 minutes, not 120. Kethvaris felt her secondary heart rate spike. They know we're up to something. Likely. Their scout drones have been probing the debris field. They may have detected the energy signatures from our work." She opened a channel to the bay. "Captain Gray, we've lost time. The Dominion arrives in 90 minutes. Gray's voice came back, strained but steady. "Copy that. We'll adapt. Primary objectives only: weapons and shields. Engines can wait." The work intensified. Kethvaris descended to the bay floor, moving among the crews. She had commanded warriors in battle, watched them die with honor and courage. This was different. This was Valorians welding and cutting and crawling through conduits, their hands black with lubricant, their pride set aside for survival. She found Gray at a junction point where 3 power systems from different vessels were being connected to the Fury's main grid. The human was on his back beneath a console, directing a Valorian technician above him. "No, rotate it 15 degrees. See that slot? The coupling doesn't need to match, it just needs to seat. There." Something clicked. "Now bypass the handshake protocol. Your system will reject the connection because it's non-standard, but we can force it. This will corrupt the power flow efficiency," the technician protested, "by maybe 8%. You'll have shields. Imperfect shields beat no shields." Gray slid out from under the console as the new system hummed to life. His face was streaked with grime and sweat, and the old limp had worsened to the point where he steadied himself against the wall. "Captain," Kethvaris said, "you should rest. I'll rest when this is done." He checked his datapad. "We've got primary weapons back to 60% on the Fury. Shields at 40. The Velith's Hope is reporting engines online. They pulled the entire drive assembly from a dead frigate and mounted it in 12 minutes. It's not aligned properly, so she'll pull left in maneuvers, but she'll move. And the other vessels?" Gray's expression flickered. "We're not going to finish. Not all of them. At this rate, we'll have 6 combat-capable ships. Maybe 7. That's still better than we had. It's not enough." He looked at the tactical display mounted on the bay wall, the Dominion fleet icons creeping closer. 38 capital ships in their main force. "Even with our repairs, we'll be outnumbered and outgunned. Then we will die fighting. That was always the plan." "No. Out." Gray's voice sharpened. "I didn't spend 4 hours pulling your fleet back from the dead just to watch it throw itself away." He pulled up a new schematic on his pad. "The Dominion's interdiction field. Show me everything you know about it." Kethvaris summoned the data. The interdiction generator was mounted on a massive support vessel at the center of the Dominion formation, a ship designed solely to project the hyperspace blocking field that prevented retreat. "It's heavily defended," she said. 3 escort wings maintain constant coverage. Even if we broke through, destroying the generator would require sustained fire that we cannot provide. Gray studied the schematic, his eyes moving in patterns she couldn't follow. "The Resolute," he said finally. "Your vessel? She's small enough to slip past their screens if we create a distraction, fast enough to reach the generator before they react." He met her eyes. "1 ship, a skeleton crew. If we can take out that interdiction field, your fleet can retreat to Coalition space. Bring back reinforcements. Make this ambush mean something." Kethvaris felt the weight of his words. "You're describing a suicide mission. I'm describing a trade, 1 frigate for a fleet." Gray's voice held no fear, only calculation. My ship's too damaged for frontline combat anyway. This way she does some good. Captain Gray, I've already talked to my crew. We're volunteers, all of us. This is what we do, Commander. We break things to make other things work. Sometimes that includes ourselves. The bay fell quieter around them, as if the work had paused to listen. No, Kethvaris said. Gray blinked. Commander, the Resolute will not attack alone. If you're going after that generator, you'll have support. She turned to Tarex, who had followed her down. The destroyer Keth's Vengeance. How damaged is she? Tarex checked his datapad. Propulsion restored, but hull integrity is at 30%. She has 3 working pulse cannons. She won't survive extended combat. She doesn't need to survive. She needs to reach the target. Kethvaris looked at Gray. One of your human engineers will command the Keth's Vengeance and lead the strike. You will remain here. Gray started to protest. You're more valuable coordinating repairs than dying in a cockpit, she cut him off. Your expertise keeps this fleet fighting. I won't waste it. Commander, I can't ask your people. You're not asking. I'm ordering. She turned to address the bay. I need volunteers for a high-risk mission against the Dominion interdiction ship. Survival is unlikely. Speak now. Every Valorian in the bay stepped forward. Gray stared at them, something shifting in his expression. Well, he said quietly, looks like we might make this work after all. They had 72 minutes. The Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 38 warships arranged in the classic Kreth attack pattern, a crescent of death designed to envelop and annihilate. At their center, the interdiction vessel Void's Grasp pulsed with the energy that kept the Valorian fleet trapped. Fleet Commander Kethvaris stood on the restored bridge of the Ascendant Fury, watching her tactical display paint the final confrontation. Around her, systems hummed with unfamiliar harmonics, the sound of hybrid repairs, of Valorian technology rebuilt through human principles. All vessels report ready, Lieutenant Sorvex announced. 7 combat-capable ships in formation. The Resolute and Keth's Vengeance are holding position behind the debris field. 7 ships against 38. The mathematics remained brutal. But mathematics didn't account for everything. Signal from the Dominion fleet, Sorvex continued. They're demanding our surrender. Ignore it. Kethvaris opened a channel to all ships. This is Commander Kethvaris. The enemy expects to find a broken fleet waiting to die. They expect us to behave as prey. We will show them differently. All ships, execute pattern Villar on my mark. Strike teams, begin your approach under cover of the engagement. On the tactical display, 2 small icons, one human, one Valorian, began moving through the debris field toward the enemy's flank. Mark. Dot. The 7 Valorian ships surged forward. The Dominion fleet responded with characteristic precision, their crescent formation closing like jaws. Energy weapons lit the void between the fleets, shields flaring against impacts that would have crippled any vessel hours ago. The Ascendant Fury shuddered as pulse fire struck her port side. Damage alerts screamed across the bridge. Port shields holding, Sorvex reported, surprise evident in his voice. The secondary generators from the Veleth's Hope are compensating. Return fire. Concentrate on their lead vessels. The Fury's weapons, a mismatched collection of systems from 4 different ships, opened up. The targeting was imprecise, the energy distribution uneven. But the weapons fired and Dominion shields flickered under the assault. Across the engagement zone, the other Valorian ships fought with similar jury-rigged fury. The Saren's light, her engines pulled from a dead frigate and mounted at an odd angle, twisted through maneuvers that no properly built ship could match, her unpredictability confusing enemy targeting systems. The Veleth's Hope, rebuilt with weapons from 3 different vessels, cycled through firing patterns that no Dominion tactical analysis could predict. Enemy formation is responding, Sorvik's call. They're having difficulty adapting. Our ships aren't behaving according to standard Valorian combat doctrine. Because they can't, Kethvaris thought. They're not standard Valorian ships anymore. The battle spread across the engagement zone, chaotic and brutal. Valorian ships took damage. Systems failed. Crews died. But they kept fighting. Components that should have been destroyed were bypassed. Weapons that should have fallen silent found power through emergency connections. On the bridge observation deck, Captain Gray watched through the viewport, his datapad tracking the status of every repair his team had made. The Keth's Wrath just lost her primary conduit, he reported through his earpiece. Tell them to switch to the secondary, the one we pulled from the frigate wreckage. It's less efficient, but it'll hold. Across the fleet, his engineers relayed instructions, keeping broken ships fighting through expertise born from necessity. But the numbers remained. 7 against 38. No amount of improvisation could overcome that forever. Then Sorvik's voice cut through the chaos. Strike team has cleared the debris field. They're approaching the void's grasp. The Resolute and Keth's Vengeance emerged from cover like daggers aimed at the enemy's heart. The human frigate led, her damaged hull somehow still intact, while the Valorian destroyer followed in her wake. The Dominion responded instantly. 6 warships broke from the main engagement to intercept. Strike team, enemy response incoming, Kethvaris transmitted. You have 4 minutes before intercept. Understood. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Chen, Gray's second-in-command, now commanding the Resolute. We'll make them count. The 2 small ships accelerated toward the interdiction vessel. Behind them, the Dominion interceptors closed the gap with predatory efficiency. Resolute, take the lead. Draw their fire, Chen ordered. Vengeance, stay on R6 until we're in range. The human frigate pushed forward, her engines straining beyond safe limits. Dominion weapons fire lanced toward her, and her shields, patched together from salvaged components, began to fail. Resolute taking heavy damage, Sorvik's report. Shield failure in 30 seconds. On the main bridge, Gray went still. Strike team, Kethvaris called. Status? Continuing approach? Chen's voice was calm despite the destruction happening around him. Vengeance, on my mark. Break and attack from the port quarter. We'll split their defensive fire. Understood, human. The Valorian captain's response held none of the contempt that might have existed hours ago. It has been an honor. The Resolute's shields collapsed. Hull breaches began appearing across her structure. But she didn't stop. 30 seconds to weapons range, Chen reported. 20 seconds. The Keth's Vengeance broke formation, drawing fire from the interdiction ship's escorts. Her 3 cannons, salvaged from 3 different vessels, mounted by warriors who had never held a welding torch before this day, opened fire with everything they had. 10 seconds. Resolute is critical, Sorvik's reported. They're venting atmosphere on all decks. The Dominion interceptors were almost in range, their weapons charging for the kill. The Resolute fired. Not at the interdiction ship, but at her own fusion core. The explosion was small by stellar standards, a brief flare of light in the darkness. But the Resolute had positioned herself precisely, and the detonation sent debris scattering across the void's grasp's shield envelope, forcing the massive vessel's defenses to cycle. In that moment, the Keth's Vengeance struck. 3 pulse cannons, imperfectly calibrated, fired through the gap in the enemy's shields. The first shot missed. The second glanced off armor plating. The third struck the interdiction generator's primary coupling. The void's grasp screamed in frequencies that transcended normal space as her defining system tore itself apart. The interdiction field, the trap that had held the Valorian fleet prisoner, collapsed. Field is down, Sorvik shouted. Hyperspace lanes are clear. The Keth's vengeance didn't survive to celebrate. The Dominion interceptors arrived seconds later, and the damaged destroyer vanished in a storm of energy weapons. But it didn't matter. The trap was broken. All ships, Kethvaris commanded, fighting withdrawal to hyperspace rally point. Cover each other's retreat. The 7 surviving ships, some barely holding together, all carrying scars that would take months to properly repair, began their extraction. The Dominion fleet pursued, but without their interdiction net, they couldn't prevent the escape. The Ascendant Fury was the last to retreat, her improvised weapons covering the other vessels until they cleared the engagement zone. As the stars stretched into hyperspace lines, Kethvaris finally allowed herself to breathe. 6 ships had escaped. Not a victory by any conventional measure, but survival against impossible odds. Beside the command station, Deacon Gray sat heavily on a storage container, his face gray with exhaustion and loss. 15 of his engineers had gone into battle today. 5 remained. Kethvaris approached him. Captain Gray, the fleet owes you its survival. Gray looked up, and his eyes held the weight of names she didn't know, the Resolute. My people. They died with honor. They died doing their jobs. His voice cracked. That's what we do. We fix things. We break ourselves fixing things. She sat beside him, a gesture that would have been unthinkable this morning. When we reach Coalition space, I will report what happened here. Admiral Vetherin will hear that humans are not observers. You are not primitive. You are. She searched for words. You are builders. Survivors. You see solutions where we see only endings. Gray was quiet for a long moment. We had a saying back on Earth. There's no such thing as beyond repair. Just not repaired yet. Through the viewport, hyperspace swirled in patterns older than light. Commander, Sorvix interrupted gently. The Admiral is requesting a full engagement report. Kethvaris stood. Tell him I will deliver it personally. And tell him that when we return to this sector, I want human engineers on every ship in the fleet. She looked down at Deacon Gray, this small, exhausted man who had pulled a fleet back from the grave through nothing more than stubbornness. And a different way of thinking. Our fleet was beyond repair, she said. That is what we believed, but you showed us that belief was the only thing truly broken. Gray managed a tired smile. We're humans, Commander. Breaking things to fix them is kind of our specialty. 6 ships carried 400 survivors toward Coalition space. Behind them, the Dominion fleet regrouped over empty wreckage, their victory stolen by a species they had dismissed as irrelevant. The war would continue. More battles would come. More losses. But somewhere in the archives of Valorian High Command, a report would be filed. Human engineering doctrine, priority integration recommended. And on a dozen worlds, Valorian warriors would learn to pick up a welding torch and make broken things work. Because there was no such thing as beyond repair. Just not repaired yet. The end.
Hay mucho, pero el pedo...
¿Cuántos piensas completar?
Sí. Mamaste. Mamaste. ¿No? No, pero ya me cansé, me quiero sentar un rato, no mames. Puta mochila pesa 10 kilos, cabrón. Dale verga.
Solo quería ver las reacciones de las personas. Tienes razón, nadie le importa, jajaja.
Y la tengo como al 80% de volumen, güey. Te digo.
Y llevas como 5 horas parado y caminando.
Sí, güey.
cuántas ya te ligaste?
A ninguna. ¿Qué onda, Carla? Papure, papapure, papure, papapure. No, ese no mames. No, pásate de verga.
At the end, there's you get these, and then at the end, it's where the points were. We have to get a picture with all. Natalie, I'm one of this. Wait, you're like this one, I had to get a closer picture.
So, tenemos que hacer 2 quests más, güey, y subimos de rango, con esta. Mejor canción gemidos. ¿Cómo? Verga.
En la calle ese sonido de van tendría otro efecto que
Ok.
Yeah, you do almost 2 of these, and then you get the one at the end. I think it's 2 pictures. I think you get one also to back with it. Yeah, it's fun. It's something to do over here.
Me lo chino. A la verga, pensé que estaban fríos.
pero haces disparos unidos.
Espérate, verga.
Oye, entendí, estás haciendo fila para comprar.
No, estamos haciendo un quest. O sea, estamos haciendo misiones secundarias. Por cada misión secundaria te dan uno de estos. O sea, por cada tier, vaya, para que me entiendas. Y está chido. Voltearon, güey, no mames, espérate. Pinche.
Quieto, puto, no me estés picoteando.
Calman, verga. No te perdono, cabrón, vete a la verga. Estoy chingando.
Terapito, ¿cuál es el sonido que consideras que tiene mejores reacciones con las personas?
Todas, güey. O sea, ¿qué piensas que pongo por poner, güey? Todas tienen reacciones, cabrón.